боже, боже, боже.
Across the vast fields of the countryside, farmers must always remain alert for a small but highly unpredictable predator. It may not possess the strength of a bear or the crop-destroying power of a wild hog, but a single careless night can be enough for several chickens to disappear. That predator is the red fox, an animal known for its intelligence, patience, and remarkable ability to adapt. It all began when surveillance cameras repeatedly captured the shadowy figure of a fox appearing near the poultry enclosure. Rather than rushing toward its target, the fox spent several nights quietly studying the farm. It moved along the fence line, paused in dark corners, checked the direction of the wind, and memorized the activity around it. Each time it returned, it seemed to understand more about the location of the lights, the entrances, and the times when people left the area. The farmers quickly reinforced the fencing, sealed every opening, and installed motion-activated lights. These measures worked for several days, but the fox soon found a way to adapt. It changed the time of its visits, chose darker areas, and began approaching from a different direction. Before long, fresh tracks appeared again in the soft ground behind the chicken coop. Instead of reacting too quickly, the farmers began watching more carefully. Additional cameras were placed along the field edges, tree lines, and narrow trails surrounding the farm. After several days of observation, a clear movement pattern gradually emerged. The fox almost always followed the same route. It avoided open ground and stayed close to tall grass, where it could remain hidden. Each time it appeared, it stepped through nearly the exact same places, as though following a path it had memorized long ago. This repeated behavior helped the farmers identify the best location for a trap. They continued monitoring the trail for several more nights to make sure the animal would not suddenly change its route. The device was concealed beneath a thin layer of soil, while dry leaves and grass were carefully rearranged to preserve the area's natural appearance. However, setting the trap was only one part of the plan. It was positioned directly along the trail the fox used most often, where the highest concentration of tracks had been found. The mechanism was carefully hidden beneath a thin layer of soil, then covered with dry leaves and natural grass so that nothing appeared unusual. Cameras were also used to monitor the location and confirm that the fox continued following its familiar route. Foxes have an extremely sensitive sense of smell and can detect even the smallest changes in their surroundings. An unfamiliar scent, disturbed soil, or a human footprint could be enough to make the animal change direction. For that reason, every step was carried out carefully to minimize any alteration to the landscape. Over the following days, the cameras continued recording the fox as it approached the prepared location, but it always stopped to observe before quietly moving away. After many days of waiting, the decisive moment finally arrived. Early one foggy morning, the camera sent an unusual alert. Fresh tracks led directly toward the route that had been monitored for weeks. After repeated inspections and adjustments, the plan finally produced results. Success came not only from the trap itself, but more importantly from understanding how the fox selected its path and responded to changes in its surroundings.
Back in a minute.
This story shows that protecting a farm is not as simple as setting a trap and waiting. Every footprint, every appearance on camera, and every disturbed section of fencing provides an important piece of information. When those details are connected, the animal's behavior gradually becomes clearer. The farmer's patience and careful observation allowed them to turn small clues into an effective strategy. The fox may not be the largest or strongest animal, but its caution, intelligence, and adaptability make it a highly unpredictable opponent. Sometimes the most effective confrontation is not based on strength, but on a battle of wits between human experience and the survival instincts of nature.
See? Move! Okay. That's for sure.
Many people assume that foxes are merely occasional visitors to farms in search of food. In reality, once they discover a place with a reliable food source, they may return night after night, quietly observing and memorizing even the smallest changes in the area. It is this patience that makes foxes one of the most difficult predators for chicken, duck, and poultry farms to deal with. They do not need to attack constantly. As long as they find a safe way in, they can cause significant losses over an extended period before the farmer even realizes what is happening. That is why tracking their movements and setting traps at the right time is always more effective than reacting in haste. The first signs usually appear in the most subtle ways. A few small paw prints pressed into soft ground after the rain, flattened grass forming a narrow path along the fence, or a handful of scattered chicken feathers near the edge of the yard can all serve as warning signs. During the day, everything appears peaceful as usual, but once darkness falls, an infrared trail camera begins capturing footage of a fox quietly emerging from the edge of the woods. Rather than heading straight toward the coop, it repeatedly stops to observe, listen, and check the wind direction. Only when it senses nothing unusual does it move forward a few more steps before disappearing back into the darkness. After nearly a week of monitoring, the control team realized that the fox rarely changed its travel route. Every night, it followed a shallow drainage ditch, crossed a patch of low grass, and approached the poultry enclosure from behind, where the lighting was weakest. On windy or rainy nights, it appeared later than usual, yet it still followed the same familiar route. This revealed that the animal had developed a highly consistent routine and completely trusted that path. That predictable pattern became the foundation for preparing the trapping strategy. Instead of placing the trap right beside the chicken coop, the control team selected a location along the narrow trail the fox regularly used. A steel foothold trap was carefully set into the soft ground, then concealed beneath a thin layer of soil and dry leaves that perfectly matched the surrounding area. Every step was carried out with great care to minimize any trace of human presence. Even blades of grass that had been disturbed were returned almost exactly to their original positions, so the landscape would appear completely natural. For an animal with senses as sharp as a fox's, even the slightest irregularity could be enough to make it change direction and stay away for days.
Caving this trap in, give it a little, but it's super.
The following nights became a true test of patience. The camera recorded the fox approaching the trap location several times, only to stop suddenly. It lowered its head, repeatedly sniffed the ground, then backed away a few steps before circling around and returning once again. On some nights, it simply stood motionless for several minutes, its ears held upright as it listened to every sound around it. No one rushed to move the trap or add extra bait, because any unnecessary disturbance could have rendered all the previous days of careful monitoring worthless. Then, early one morning, while a blanket of mist still covered the fields, the camera sent an alert showing prolonged movement at the trap site. After days of cautious investigation, the fox had finally stepped onto its familiar route and been caught in the trap. This success was not the result of luck, but of careful observation, a thorough understanding of the fox's movement patterns, and choosing the right moment to act. Afterwards, the farm owner reinforced the fencing, sealed the gaps beneath the wire mesh, and cleared away leftover food around the livestock area to reduce the chances of attracting other foxes. The story demonstrates that when it comes to protecting livestock, the trap is only one part of the solution. Far more important is understanding the animal's natural behavior and having the patience to follow the subtle signs that nature leaves behind.
Okay.
Recently, farmers have repeatedly spotted foxes appearing around livestock farms. They often move near poultry pens, cross-cultivated fields, or roam along farm fences. At first, these sightings were relatively infrequent and did not cause much concern. However, encounters gradually became more common, and many farming households repeatedly reported poultry disappearing or being attacked. As these incidents continued to occur, local residents realized that the threat was becoming increasingly serious. To protect their animals and reduce losses, they began searching for effective methods to control the foxes. Foxes did not limit their activities to farmland but gradually expanded into nearby residential areas. Some individuals were seen in backyards, storage sheds, or close to places where animal feed was kept. Others traveled along narrow roads between homes before returning to agricultural areas to search for food. After repeatedly finding easy food sources, they continued returning to the same familiar locations with increasing frequency. Their presence so close to people's homes caused growing concern because of repeated attacks. In some cases, foxes even attacked people, making residents even more frightened. After surveying the area, the farmers began installing trap systems at multiple locations. The traps were placed along routes frequently used by foxes, near fences, trails, and forest edges. Bait was carefully prepared to increase the chances of attracting them into the traps. The trapping effort extended beyond poultry enclosures into surrounding agricultural areas to improve overall effectiveness. After installation, the farmers regularly inspected every trap, replaced bait whenever necessary, and adjusted locations according to changes in fox movement, allowing the control program to become increasingly effective. After some time, the trap system began producing clear results. The first traps were triggered, and many foxes were gradually captured at the locations that had been prepared in advance. Most of them were caught along the routes leading toward livestock facilities or near trails close to the forest. After each successful capture, the farmers quickly checked the trap, handled the captured fox, and reset the trap to continue controlling other foxes still active in the area. The traps were inspected on a regular schedule to ensure the system remained operational while the control area was expanded into nearby locations where foxes frequently appeared. As more traps were installed throughout the area, the remaining foxes gradually changed their feeding behavior to adapt. They became more cautious when approaching places where traps had previously been encountered but still continued returning to farms and residential areas. Some individuals selected different travel routes or appeared during hours when fewer people were present in order to search for food. Whenever they discovered poultry or livestock feed that was not properly protected, they quickly entered the area and left again within a short period. This forced the farmers to continue adjusting their control methods to match the fox's changing behavior. Over time, the number of foxes appearing around livestock farms declined significantly compared with before. However, they did not disappear completely from the area. The main reason was that the farms still provided abundant food sources and favorable conditions for feeding. In addition, some foxes from neighboring areas continued moving in to replace those that had been captured. As a result, residents still occasionally observed foxes around farms and nearby communities, although sightings became much less frequent. This demonstrated that long-term fox control would remain necessary to reduce livestock losses and maintain stable farming operations.
On farms located near forests or abandoned fields, foxes often appear without leaving many obvious signs behind. They are smaller than many other predators, but their keen observation skills and ability to remember the terrain make them a serious threat to poultry flocks. Everything began when the farmer repeatedly discovered that a few chickens had disappeared in the early morning. The coop door was still closed, the fence showed no signs of damage, and there were no large footprints on the ground. However, in the back corner of the coop, there was a patch of soft soil that had been lightly disturbed, along with a few feathers caught on the low wire fence. These subtle traces suggested that an animal had repeatedly crawled close to the ground to reach the area. After inspecting the entire farm, the wildlife control team suspected that a fox was exploiting a gap beneath the fence. Motion-activated cameras were installed near the trail behind the farm. On the first night, the footage captured a red fox emerging from the bushes. Instead of heading straight toward the coop, it stopped at the edge of the grass, lifted its head to check its surroundings, and then slowly walked along the fence. The fox repeatedly lowered its head to sniff the ground before disappearing at the exact spot where a narrow path led toward the field. Subsequent recordings showed that it consistently returned along nearly the same route. It appeared only after the farm had fallen quiet, passed a large tree, followed the low vegetation, and stopped behind the chicken coop. On some nights, it simply observed the area for a few minutes before leaving. On others, it approached the fence and tested the soil beneath it by digging. Such patience showed that the fox was carefully assessing every small change before deciding to make a full entry. The wildlife control team did not set a trap immediately. Instead, they continued monitoring the area to determine the fox's exact travel route and the spots where it usually stepped. After several days, they selected a narrow section of trail between two bushes. This was the point the fox had to pass through if it wanted to reach the rear of the coop. A properly sized steel foothold trap was discreetly placed there, while the surrounding area was left looking as close to its original condition as possible to avoid raising the animal's suspicion. Concealing the trap required exceptional care. The soil on the trail was restored to its natural appearance. Nearby branches were disturbed as little as possible, and the wildlife control team minimized leaving behind unfamiliar scents. With its highly sensitive sense of smell, a fox can detect unusual signs that humans would never notice. For that reason, once everything was in place, no one walked near the area again. The cameras were used to monitor the site remotely, minimizing any changes that might cause the fox to switch to a different route. During the first 2 nights, The fox appeared but never stepped into the prepared location. It stood several meters away, repeatedly sniffing the air before circling around the bushes. The following night, it came closer but still paused for a long time before leaving. The wildlife control team decided not to alter their plan, knowing that any intervention at that stage could undo everything they had learned through days of observation. They understood that facing a fox was never a matter of impatience. On the morning of the 5th day, the cameras detected prolonged movement along the trail. When the wildlife control team arrived to inspect the site, the fox had finally been caught in the steel foothold trap after several nights of caution. It was promptly handled according to appropriate wildlife control procedures, avoiding any unnecessary prolonging of the situation. The trap was then removed, and the entire farm was inspected once more to determine what had attracted the animal in the first place. The gap beneath the fence was sealed, the old wire mesh was replaced, and leftover feed around the coop was cleaned up every day. Motion sensor lights and cameras remained in operation to detect other animals as early as possible. The fox trapping operation ended successfully, but the most important lesson was not the steel foothold trap itself. It was the ability to read subtle signs, understand the animal's habits, and patiently wait for the right moment that enabled the farmer to protect the poultry flock from an intelligent and cautious predator. Predators do not always reveal themselves directly to humans. Often, their presence is first indicated by small signs repeatedly appearing in the same place. At first, the farm owner only noticed that a few chickens had disappeared. He assumed it was accidental, but the flock continued shrinking each night. One morning, while checking the fence, he found several small tracks near the coop. The door was intact, the wire had not been visibly damaged, and no other suspicious clues appeared. Only after an infrared camera was installed did the culprit emerge. A red fox repeatedly tried to break through the wire and after several attempts slipped away with its prey. As forests shrink because of human activity and prey such as rabbits and small birds become scarcer, foxes are forced to expand their feeding range. Farms near woodland edges become attractive because chickens, ducks, rodents, fallen eggs, and food scraps are readily available. Reaching a poorly protected poultry coop requires far less energy than chasing wild prey. Foxes have good memories and quickly learn safe routes, periods when people are absent, and locations where food can be found. Once they discover a stable source, they return regularly, sometimes appearing more often or bringing their young. As the fox population increases, pressure on livestock areas also grows. Understanding the cause is still not enough, because many protective measures fail due to small mistakes. Farmers may reinforce coop doors, add fencing, or install overhead barriers to stop foxes from jumping inside. However, they often overlook gaps beneath the wire, soft ground that can be dug through, or openings hidden behind bushes. Motion lights and loud sounds may keep foxes away for several nights, but the effect rarely lasts. Once the animal realizes there is no real danger, it changes its schedule and returns when the farm is quieter. Another mistake is placing traps in open areas because they are easier to monitor. Foxes usually follow fences, ditches, narrow paths, and bushes for cover. As a result, the wrong animal, such as a cat, may be caught instead. To capture a fox successfully, the farmer must first understand its habits and use them to plan an effective response. Foxes usually travel alone, move quietly, and prefer routes with natural cover. Tracks for caught on wire, compressed soil, or a narrow passage through bushes can reveal a regular path. The trap must be placed directly along that route, not wherever it is most convenient for people. Eggs, meat, or food scraps may be used as bait, but location remains the deciding factor, such as a spot near a woodpile. When setting the trap, the surrounding leaves, dry grass, and soil should remain undisturbed. Chemical smells, clear footprints, and unusual changes must be avoided. Leaving the trap inactive for several days can also help the fox become familiar with it and lower its guard. Eventually, the trapping effort succeeded in catching a highly cautious red fox. Another effective option was a live capture steel cage. Because foxes are wary, cage traps rarely work immediately. The floor was covered with soft soil and dry leaves to hide the metallic smell, while the bait was placed deep inside. On the first night, the fox remained outside, repeatedly raising its head to listen before quietly leaving. On the second night, it came closer but still refused to cross the entrance. The farmer left the cage in place and limited his movement nearby, so the area remained natural. Near dawn on the third day, the camera recorded the fox moving along the bushes, pausing at the entrance and slowly stepping inside. When its paw pressed the trigger plate, the steel door dropped instantly. The fox turned in panic, but could no longer escape.
Okay. Coming to get.
Once the immediate danger had been reduced, the next step was preventing the problem from returning. A secure farm cannot depend on traps alone. Food scraps should be removed, waste containers kept tightly closed, and poultry coops built with solid floors and deeply buried wire to prevent digging. Dense bushes close to the coop should be cleared, while motion lights and guard dogs should serve only as supporting measures. Any control method must follow local regulations and prioritize safe, humane practices. The most important lesson is that foxes do not appear by chance. They come because they have found an opportunity. What humans call stealing is simply the feeding instinct of an animal gradually losing its natural habitat. When farmers read the signs correctly, understand the cause, and improve their protection methods, losses will gradually decline and livestock management will become more stable.
It all began on what seemed like an ordinary morning. When Pike walked out to the coop, the chickens were huddled in a corner, crying out in panic. A patch of earth beneath the fence had recently been dug up, while part of the coop roof appeared to have been pushed out of place. Pike searched the yard but found only a few faint tracks. At first he assumed a stray cat had slipped through. Yet within a few nights, more poultry disappeared. As the same signs kept returning, Pike began to suspect the most cunning predator around the farm: a fox. Suspicion alone was not enough. Pike needed to know exactly what happened after everyone went to sleep. He installed infrared cameras inside the chicken coop, along the bottom of the fence, and beside the tree line behind the farm. On the first night, several small shapes suddenly appeared on the screen. A reddish-brown fox moved around the yard so quietly that it made almost no sound. It stopped at the edge of the yard, raised its head to check the wind, then lowered its nose to inspect the ground. Instead of heading straight for the coop, it circled the area, watched the lights, and tested several approaches before vanishing into the bushes. On later visits, it returned at nearly the same hour. Even when it encountered the resident cat, the fox showed no interest. Pike realized these were not random visits. The fox was studying the farm before brazenly stealing chickens. He continued watching patiently, and the collected footage gradually revealed a hidden route the animal had used for many nights. Once Pike had memorized the fox's usual path, he quietly prepared his next move. A steel foothold trap was placed along a narrow passage between the trees and the fence, where the animal appeared almost every night. Every step was handled carefully. The dry leaves were returned to their original positions, the soil remained undisturbed, and the nearby branches were left untouched. From the outside, nothing looked different from previous nights. Still, the fox seemed to sense that something had changed. The cameras showed it approaching slowly, stopping for a long time, and raising its head to observe the area. Its ears turned in several directions while its nose tested every light current of air. On one night, it jumped directly onto the roof of the chicken coop. On another, it circled the building from every direction, searching for a way inside. Pike did not rush. He knew the fox remembered not only its route but also the smallest changes in its surroundings. This contest would therefore be decided not by speed, but by patience on both sides. Before dawn one morning, while cold mist still covered the poultry area, Pike's phone suddenly received a camera alert. A reddish-brown fox was struggling at the spot where the trap had been placed days earlier. It twisted its body, pulled at its leg, and searched in every direction for an escape, but its familiar retreat was now blocked. Pike quickly arrived to bring the situation under control. The battle of patience that had lasted many nights was finally over. Even so, he continued setting traps for other foxes. He believed that without further action, the chickens he had worked so hard to raise would soon become food for another predator. Pike did not always rely on a foothold trap. In another part of the farm, he placed a live capture cage to hold the fox while limiting injury. The animal continued arriving at its usual time, but repeatedly circled the cage and examined every unfamiliar scent. Eventually, it stepped inside and the door closed automatically. Once again, success came from careful observation, patience, and a clear understanding of the animal's behavior. This fox trapping story shows that protecting livestock and poultry involves more than placing a trap or building a stronger fence. More importantly, it requires the ability to recognize the smallest clues left by nature. Foxes are intelligent, patient, and always ready to take advantage of human mistakes. To respond effectively, farmers must show the same degree of patience.
There.
Right beside the farm, The fox calmly fed on the prey it had just caught, as though the area had already become a familiar part of its hunting territory. After leaving, it quietly followed the bushes and narrow paths hidden from view to avoid detection. The fox did not move at random, but almost always used the same familiar routes. After appearing many times, it seemed to have memorized the entire area around the poultry enclosure, knowing exactly when it was safe to approach and which path offered the fastest escape. Because of this, the farmer decided to track its movements and begin a trapping operation that would continue for several days. Early one morning, the area around the livestock enclosure was found in complete disorder. The chicken coop door had been pushed out of place. Chickens lay scattered across the ground, and feathers were spread throughout the area, showing that the fox had entered the farm repeatedly. The farmers quickly reviewed the surveillance cameras installed around the property. After examining several recordings, they discovered that the fox almost always followed the same route. It used paths hidden from view and approached the farm only when the surroundings were completely quiet. This discovery allowed them to identify its regular path and begin planning how to protect the poultry enclosure. Setting the trap required extreme care. The foothold trap was concealed beneath a thin layer of soil and dry leaves. Once the work was finished, every branch, patch of grass, and layer of leaves around the site was carefully restored to its original position, minimizing any unusual signs. Strong-smelling bait was then placed nearby to guide the fox toward the exact spot. The farmers understood that foxes possess a highly sensitive sense of smell and remain alert to even the smallest changes in familiar surroundings. A strange scent, a human footprint, or a single disturbed detail could make the animal turn away immediately, avoid the area, and begin using a different route. While waiting to see whether the first trap would work, the farmer prepared 2 additional traps in separate locations. One was placed beside the fence, where the fox often traveled while approaching the poultry area. The other was positioned farther along the trail leading toward the forest, where the animal had appeared on several consecutive nights. Both locations were carefully disguised with soil, grass, and dry leaves so that the surroundings would remain as natural as possible. Once everything was ready, the farmers continued waiting patiently, hoping the fox would change its route, pass through one of the new locations, and step into one of the prepared traps. After many days of patient waiting, the fox finally appeared. It did not rush toward the bait, but repeatedly stopped to observe the surroundings, lower its head to smell the ground, and inspect every possible sign of disturbance. Although it continued to keep a safe distance, the strong scent of the bait gradually drew it deeper into the prepared area. After hesitating for some time, the fox began feeding and slowly lowered its guard. When it moved into the closest position, the trap was immediately triggered, bringing an end to the farmer's long and tense period of tracking and waiting. After days of observation and patient waiting, the farmers finally caught the foxes that had repeatedly entered the property and caused damage. As soon as they received signals from the trapping locations, they traveled to each site in turn to inspect the area and collect the animals that had been caught. The result brought the multi-day operation to an end and removed the immediate threat to the poultry enclosure. From that point forward, the chicken coop was no longer disturbed. The birds could move around and feed normally, and the farmer felt more at ease as the property temporarily returned to a stable and secure condition.
Here are some of the survivors.
By a fox. Nine.
The story of trapping the foxes shows that protecting a farm depends not only on the traps themselves, but also on human observation and patience. To deal with an intelligent animal such as a fox, farmers must understand how it moves, when it searches for food, and which natural habits guide its behavior. In the continuing struggle between people and wild predators, knowledge of animal behavior remains one of the most important factors in protecting livestock and maintaining stability throughout the farm.
Over the past few weeks, many farm owners have repeatedly spotted foxes around their livestock areas. They often move along fences, cross open fields, or quietly approach poultry coops in the early morning and late afternoon. At first, residents only saw a few animals from time to time and assumed it was normal wildlife activity. However, the number of sightings quickly began to rise. Around the same time, many families started noticing that chickens, ducks, and other small animals were disappearing without any clear signs. Some people even saw foxes carrying prey across the fields before vanishing into the edge of the woods. These repeated incidents made the community realize this was no longer an isolated problem. Not long afterward, the foxes began expanding their range beyond the livestock areas. They were seen near sheds, gardens, feed storage areas, and roads running through nearby neighborhoods. Some even came close to homes at night in search of food scraps or pet food. Their quiet movements allowed them to reach places that often went unnoticed. The growing number of sightings suggested that the foxes had learned where reliable food sources were located and were becoming more comfortable around human activity. This increased the risk of repeated visits, especially on farms with weak fencing or poultry coops located close to wooded areas.
I think we've got some roosters.
In response,
Out of there.
farm owners began surveying the entire area to identify the routes the foxes used most often. They checked gaps beneath fences, narrow trails through tall grass, areas near water sources, and paths connecting the woods to open farmland. Once the likely travel routes were identified, a trapping system was set up in several locations. Some traps were placed near poultry coops, while others were positioned along fences and at the edges of fields. Bait was placed inside to encourage the foxes to approach, but every location had to be chosen carefully to avoid making them suspicious. During the first few days, not every trap produced results. Some foxes came close, stopped to sniff the area, and then turned away. Animals that had already traveled around the farm several times appeared highly sensitive to even small changes in their surroundings. Because of this, farmers had to check the cameras regularly, study the direction of travel, and adjust the trap locations. Some traps were moved to narrower paths where the foxes had to pass close to the fence. Others were carefully concealed with dry grass, branches, and materials already found in the area. The process required patience, because even an unfamiliar scent or an object placed unnaturally could keep a fox away for several days. After a period of monitoring and adjustment, the traps began to work more effectively. The first foxes were caught along routes leading directly toward the poultry coops. Whenever a trap was triggered, farmers quickly arrived to inspect the situation, handle it, and reset the equipment. Regular checks helped reduce the amount of time an animal remained in the trap and ensured the system was always ready to operate. Camera footage also showed that not every fox used the same path. Some traveled along the edges of the fields, while others circled behind sheds or approached from the rear of the livestock area. As a result, the control zone was gradually expanded. After several weeks of continued control efforts, fox activity around the farms dropped significantly. Even so, the animals did not disappear completely because the surrounding area still offered plenty of woodland, open grass, and natural food sources. New foxes could still move in from nearby areas and quickly locate the farms when conditions were favorable. For that reason, camera monitoring, fence inspections, and traps placed at key locations remained in use. For livestock owners, controlling fox activity was not a task that could be completed in just a few days, but a long-term process requiring regular observation, adjustment, and cooperation to protect animals from future intrusions.